Timothy Ryan Spear, and we're going to be going over Hurricane Harvey, events before, during, the financial impact, and also lessons learned from it. This is a video from some of the drone footage by Case Boogie, and you can see it was 8/27/17. After the ad, we can actually, pretty cool car. There you go. This is another video that we're not really going to go over, but you can tell that some of the areas, the before and after, is quite different. With that being said, Hurricane Harvey not just didn't come in, it came out, back in, came back out, came back in. All the way from the 24th to the August 31st, but August 25th, that's when it really hit. It was a storm warning, then was discontinued. Then it came back in and it hit, and hit Corpus Christi and Port O'Connor with 130-mile-an-hour winds, and left 250,000 people without power. It was a hurricane. It was a Category 4 at that point. Then it went back out, and then between the 29th and the 26th, between Port O'Connor, Texas, Morgan City, Louisiana, it made landfall for the third time. And it hit the coastal cities of Port Arthur and Beaumont, Texas, and the border Louisiana. 26 inches of rain in 24 hours. August 30th, that's when it was downgraded to a tropical storm. Then the 31st, it finally dissipated and left the rain all up the United States. The Archimina chemical plant in Crosby, Texas ignited, not because it had power, because of lack of power. It needed the power for the refrigerant to stay in there, but there was no generators or anything, so it caught fire. And then you can tell how far it came back in. In the next slide you'll see it came back in and out, but Tuesday to Wednesday just dumping rain. And then here, warning, watch, warning, back in green, and then try to dump all that rain. Emergency agencies involved in the response, all the way from 911, volunteer fire departments, U.S. Coast Guard. They gave 2,200 water rescues, and by other agencies. FEMA gave 306,000 meals and liters of water, also thousands of cots and blankets. The Department of Defense aided. They gave 100 tactical vehicles, 50,000 gallons of gas, and 450,000 gallons of diesel for generators and everything else. Army Corps of Engineers They donated sandbags to help build, help try to restore power to the grid, and also aided in plans to help the flooded areas. Department of Human Services, they even gave people 500 employees, and with 1,000 on there if they needed them. That was just the government, from city to federal to state, all those agencies. Then you go into private. AmeriCorps sent 250 people aid food and shelter relief to affected areas. Red Cross, National Guard, more state and federal. And Operation Barbecue, that was all private. That was a effort of many businesses to feed volunteers and victims during the storm. There were more agencies, but that was it. Here's your zones of the evacuation plan that the state put forth. As you can tell, your hard hits are going to be the coast. Then you got the coastal. Then you got your zone A, which is your yellow, your greens, and then also zone C, it's your orange. All of those had flood dangers of some kind. The problem with the evacuation plan was really wasn't carried out in all cities. Some had it, some didn't. Some were advised to evacuate from the senator, well, the governor of Texas. Other states, like the Houston Mayor County Judge Ed Emmett, stay home, hunker down. So there's a lot of confusion between the evacuation plan to stay or go. It wasn't very clear cut. It wasn't really the winds. The winds played a part in the hurricane, but also the flooding aftermath of the hurricane. It was one of the wettest tropical storms on record. Caused 107 confirmed deaths, flood-related. 28,000 square miles that Harvey flooded, the size of Lake Michigan. A lot of water. Hurricane Harvey dumped an estimated 27 trillion gallons of water. It was so heavy, Houston sank 2 centimeters with the sheer weight, and it'll rebound once the water recedes, probably by now a year later. But still, it sank a city, just by a little bit. In one city, Nederland, the rainfall hit 60 inches. I'm 71 and a half. Not that much. It was a record for the single storm in the United States. Created a 1 in 1,000 year flood event. It flooded 800 water waste treatment facilities, 13 Superfund sites, and sewage and top chemicals leaked all up in that area. Damaged over 1 million vehicles as well. Flooding. September 14th, at least 3,900 homes were still without power. So from that time to that time, you still had a lot of homes without power. It damaged 204,000 homes. 3/4 were outside of the 100-year plan, flood plan. 19 water systems were down and 31 wastewater systems remained offline. All that flooding, disruption to businesses, periods lasting up to months, unemployment, transportation infrastructure, you can't get around. Crop loss, 25% of orange crops. Increased fuel price, property damage. As you can tell in this chart, 1978 somewhere, Amelia. But then if you go, Hurricane Harvey, 52 inches, 2017. So it's a big difference. That was a lot of impacted areas of flooding. You can tell. It was one of the costliest hurricanes on record, just behind Hurricane Katrina. $125 billion. And tourist recovery, and this is 1 year later. 90 miles east of Houston, half of the 55,000 residents are still displaced as a result of the hurricane. This year, the state parks will, they're looking at about 8 to 9% drop compared to last year before the hurricane. And Rockport Lodging is 52% of what it was available before Harvey. Port Aransas is 55% capacity, so that's what, half your revenue, 1 year. If you can't hold them, they can't pay. Goose Island will allow camping at 64%, but you can't fish. So, residential recovery. 80% of the households affected by the flood did not have flood insurance. According to FEMA, the agency payout to the victims without flood insurance was $4,203. Fewer than 2% of the survivors of proof of federal aid were eligible for direct housing. 2%. 2008 survey revealed that 18% of unsheltered homeless people and individuals in Houston were living on the streets because of Harvey. 18% a year later. Lessons learned. Every home that's within the 100 to 500 year floodplains will be built 2 feet above. So they're starting to crack down on building codes, which is good, to mitigate flooding to structures. It passed on September 1st. And FEMA, and I'm probably sure Houston will have a say, are going to go over their 100 and 500 year floodplain to really help future mitigate flooding possibilities. And the FEMA also learned that methods of communications between different cultures, languages, and stuff also affect accurate and timely information and how it is distributed. So that's also something that they need to work on. FEMA is large. The idea of FEMA, what it stands for and what they do, it needs to change in the public's mind a little bit. So they want to simplify FEMA. Just like communications, short-term and long-term response, recovery phase of disasters at FEMA. They're overlooking that. Also challenges and opportunities by newer technologies, internet, social platforms in disaster responses. Well, how they can use that to their better ability. And in the building culture, preparedness, and the public value of purchasing flood insurance, and also maybe building to better building codes and stricter building codes. So if it does happen, you're not at total loss. That is my presentation on Hurricane Harvey. It's pretty straightforward. And do you have any questions? Beth?